Hello everyone, and welcome to another part of What If Nazarick Was in Game of Thrones? This amazing story was written by Azazel72. Please support them. Don't forget to like, sub, and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. The Ministry of Magic / Main Gate Room. The Minister of Magic, Saronin, was standing in the gate room with a number of his subordinates. They were waiting for the return of the Crown Princess, Malik Al-Mut. But there was no excitement, nor any talk or conversations between them. Only silence. The atmosphere of the room was grim. The expression on everyone's face was cold and grim, with a hint of fear that they could not hide. Ever since Saronin received the disturbing news and orders from the royal seat of the supreme beings in Nazarick, he became like this. He was told to call Malik back from Mir and tell her to report back to Nazarick ASAP. How are we going to do this, my lord? I for one do not dare to talk to Malik Sama about this. Leave it to me. I know how to put in words that won't agitate her grace. Even though he said so with a poker face, he could not calm his heart. He could only tremble at the thought of Malik's anger, which might burn him and his subordinates like wildfire. The gate rings began to span, and the way to Mir was opened. Malik, alongside Robet Sami and a few other of his merchants, stepped through and returned to their own world. Everyone in the room bowed before her. Saronin, welcome back, your grace. We have been waiting for you. Malik nodded and waved her hand, as if to indicate that they can stand up. Malik, hello, Minister Saronin. It is good to see you again. Do tell your subordinates to rise up. The past few days have been extremely good for me. You don't need to stand on ceremony. Malik's voice and statement only deepened his fear. If she was indeed in a good mood, then giving her bad news would only result in a bigger lash out of rage. Saronin signaled his subordinates to stand up. Malik looked at their faces and saw concern and fear written all over them. She felt disturbed by their expressions. She had just returned from her travels and finished her mission successfully. Considering that they had regular contact with each other and shared the news through the intelligence agency spies, she expected to be received with hospitality and a warm welcome, not by such cold faces. She felt that something abnormal was going on. Malik, is something the matter, Minister? You seems unsettled. Saronin, no, your grace. It is just that He could not finish his sentence, but his hesitation only made it worse for him. Malik narrowed her eyes at Saronin. She could tell that something was wrong. What is it, Saronin? Had something happened in my absence? She had regular contact with the other side through their spies and was informed of the events that was happening in their world, but decided to ask anyway to play it safe. Saronin realized his mistake. He calmed his mind and gathered his courage. Saronin, not long after you left for Mir, the Supreme One Ains Ulgaun Sama decided to leave this place as well. He, alongside Ora Belafari Sama, and about 300 soldiers of Nazar Doom, and in company of some of the Pleiades, left for Middle-earth. Malik, why would he leave for Middle-earth? I thought we were supposed to take those worlds one at a time. Why would he leave while I was away? Saronin, His Majesty did not say anything about that matter, only that he needed to subjugate that world personally. His Grace also said that he was bringing Ora Sama with his in order to build good relationship with the elves of Middle-earth. But yesterday His Majesty returned. He immediately summoned all of the guardians back to Nazarick and ordered us deliver a message to you and summon you back. But fortunately, you came right at the time before we needed to do anything. Malik, why would my father summon me? Did something happen while I was away? Saronin, no, your grace. Nothing that I know of. I believe it would be better if you were to ask His Majesty yourself. He has been waiting for your return since his return from Middle-earth. He lied. He knew very well what has happened, but chose to leave it to Ains to tell her about it. After all, Ains was the least likely person for Malik to harm, even if she was angry. Malik went into thought and looked at Saronin and his subordinates again. She could tell from their fearful expression that they knew something, but they did not dare tell her. Well, there is no point in trying to squeeze it out of them. They will just try to buff their way out of it with wordplay. Malik, Saronin, inform the Minister of Court, Sebastian, in Nazarick that I have returned. I will be heading to Nazarick immediately. Saronin bowed his head. Yes, your grace. At once. The great tomb of Nazarick / 10th floor Grand Hall. Malik was heading toward her father's office. The maids whom she encountered all bowed their head, but even they had uneasy looks on their faces as they watched Malik pass. She kept walking to her father's office until a familiar face and voice stopped her. Demiurge, Malik Sama. Malik looked at the one who appeared before her. It was indeed Demiurge, the Minister of Intelligence. Malik, hello Demiurge. I am glad to see you. I wanted to thank you for your brilliant plans. I mean seriously tricking Kalpono into attacking Mir by manipulating him through his son Mako, which you had replaced by one of your doppelgangers. Do you have the real Mako body warm in the shroud of sleep for when we manipulate the Dothraki next time? Malik's voice was filled with respect and gratitude. But Demiurge's voice and answer was not what she expected. Demiurge, yes. With the shroud of sleep, the corpse is persevered in its prime condition. When we leave it, they will assume that he was killed at the time they found it, but let us not dwell on it. Ain Sama is waiting for you. His voice was cold and sad, which was very out of character for him. Malik knew the guardians and other servants of Nazarick very well. After all, she lived with them for 1,000 years. She knew exactly what kind of person Demiurge was behind his smile and gentle behavior. He was a demon, an archdevil with no moral code and a great amount of cruelty who enjoyed the torments of other beings. He had no attachment to anyone. The only people he ever treated with respect and kindness of the gentleman he appeared to be were the denizens of Nazarick. To him, everyone else were no different than livestock. For him to be in a grievous mode was very alarming. They walked together to Ain's office and arrived at the door. She decided to ask her questions along the way. Malik, what is going Demiurge? Why does everyone act like this today? Demiurge, when you were gone, some bad things have happened. I am sure you are aware of Ain's Sama trip to Middle-earth. Demiurge tapped the door. A maid poked her head outside to see who it was. She immediately opened the door when she saw Malik and Demiurge. Malik looked at the room before her and the people in it. Ains was sitting on his chair. Surrounding him were Nazarick guardians and the Pleiades battle maids. Everyone were present. Shaltir, Cositus, Mare, Victim, Albedo, and Pandora Actor. The members of Pleiades were present as well. The only people missing were Aura and Yuri Alpha. Malik walked toward Ains, with Demiurge following her from behind. Ains' head was down, looking at something that he was holding in his hands. He didn't even seem to notice Malik and Demiurge's presence. Malik, hail and greeting to you, Father. I have returned from my travels, and I am ready to explain our deeds and essos to your esteemed person. Malik didn't usually take such formal and respectful tone with her father, but since the guardians were all present and judging from what she heard from before, this was a formal meetings, so certain courtesies had to be held. Ain slowly raised his head and looked at Malik. It was impossible to read any facial expressions from a skull, but the looks in Ain's eyes were readable to his own daughter. Ains, perhaps you came to explain this? Ains raised his hands and showed the item that was on them to Malik. Malik gave a good look at it and recognized what it was. It was a metallic whip. Its name was Queen, the favorite weapon of Aura. Malik's eyes went wide at the horrifying thought that appeared in her head. Ains, perhaps you came to tell me why Aura is dead. Why Yuri Alpha is dead. Every person in the room wept. Even those who naturally could not shed tear covered their eyes and made a low and mournful sound. Mare more than anyone else. He was a handsome young man. It was hard to believe that he was 1,086-year-old. But that was because he was a member of the Dark Elves royalty. The Dark Elves had a lifespan of hundreds of years. The members of their royalty were said to live even longer than that, for thousands of years. Mare could not stop shedding tears for his dead twin sister. Malik shook her head in disbelief. She could not believe that Aura, a level 100 guardian and one of her best friends, to be dead. Malik, no, it can't be. What are you talking about? What has happened here? Ains, your plan worked, my daughter. Much more than I would have liked. Malik, what happened? Father. Ains handed Aura's whip to her brother Mare, who took it with trembling hands and wet eyes, and rose from his seat. Ains, while you were away, enjoying your adventures, I decided to act as you have suggested. I went to Middle-earth. I took Aura and some of the Pleiades, alongside a legion of Nazar Doom and several level 80 bodyguards, with me to help conquer that world and build good relationship with its people, and everything was going on quite well. No one could beat our fellowship. We towered above them in all things, and every time I battled it was the return of the king. I won't bore you with the full story, because it's quite long and complicated. Even if they were to make movies out of it, I imagine it would a 12 hours long trilogy. It sounded like a joke, but no one laughed. Ains, 2 days ago, When we were traveling out of the Dark Kingdom called Mordor, our company was attacked. The attackers used an army of mid-tier angles, comparable to our undead, and tried to kill us all. The angles were no problem for me or Aura, but there were also several level 80 opponents among the enemy ranks. There was also a familiar person among them, someone who led the attack on us. Someone who was wearing a suit of divine class armor and holding a divine class holy sword and shield. He tried to kill me. He did manage to kill Yuri, and when I tried to fight him, I found out that he had very high magic resistance and was immune to my necromantic powers. They killed all of our soldiers and my bodyguards. But since we expected this assault to happen, we had a contingency plan in motion. Cocytus arrived in time with reinforcement and drove the enemy back. But before that, the enemy tried to fulfill their mission and kill me, and very nearly succeeded. But Aura shielded me with her body and was slain in my place instead. Malik was shocked by all that she heard. From the existence of a powerful entity and an army of mid-tier angels. There was only one period of time when she faced such things. It was during their wars with the players that appeared 800 years ago and formed their own kingdom, called the Grand Holy Republic. The Sorceress Kingdom and the Republic fought for centuries against each other, mainly due to the difference in their ideas of ruling. The absolute authority of the Sorcerer King and the court in the Sorceress Kingdom, and the belief in democracy and the sharing of power in the Republic, which was ruled by a High Council and a Senate. Plus the fact that Sorceress Kingdom had high tolerance for coexisting with heteromorphic creatures such as vampires and demons, while the Republic only preached the supremacy of humanoid races and a few demi-human, heteromorphic races whom coexisted peacefully with humanity. But there were times when they broke peace with each other because no side was strong enough to completely destroy the other, and their battles resulted in devastating consequences for the whole world. But about 100 years ago, the Seventh War broke out between them after a series of events that ended in armistice between the two rival kingdoms. It ended with the destruction of the Holy Republic and the death of its counselors. And the entire world became under the flag of the Sorceress Kingdom. Malik decided to clear the doubts in her head. Malik, wait, you said there was a familiar person amongst those that attacked you. Do you know that person from before? Ains, yes. And I believe you know him as well. Let me just show you. Intoma. Intoma Vasilisa Zeta, a member of Battle Maids, answered in her sweet childlike voice. Intoma, yes Ains Sama. Ains, you can cast illusion spells, right? Since you were with me and saw that person, cast an illusion spell and show his image to all those present. Intoma, yes Ains Sama. Perfect illusion. Intoma casted her spell, and the image that appeared before everyone was. Malik looked at the image, and her jaw dropped. It was no metaphor. Her mouth was opened by the image that she saw. It was a tall figure in a strikingly beautiful full-plated white armor. Golden lines and runes decorated his armor, and the low light emitting from it gave it an air of holiness. In his right hand he held a silver steel sword with a golden handle, while in his left hand was a white medium-sized shield that gave the impression of an immovable wall. Memories of the past begun to surface, the ones that she had kept locked away and buried in her mind for a long time, and took her to the past. The Plains of Morns, year 897 FSK, founding of the Sorceress Kingdom, / the Sixth War between the Sorceress Kingdom and the Holy Republic. A crimson and yellow expanse. A charred wasteland, devoid of any living creatures and filled with grass. A bloody and fiery land of battle and death. The Plains of Morns underscore where the undead armies of the Sorceress Kingdom and the angelic armies of the Grand Holy Republic warred with each other for many, many years. Collapsed towers and ruined fortresses, built and rebuilt many times over in centuries of conflicts, jutted out of the earth like scattered tombstones. Of course, none of them were intact. Their debris was scattered everywhere. The cause was not so much weathering as battles that took place in this, once prosperous and populated, region. Scenes like this existed side by side with normal grass-covered plains. This was why it was called the Plains of Morns, because of the countless death and destruction that took place in it. The sun was in the middle of the sky, shining its radiance on the land from the midst of smoke rising from the fields of battle. A battle that was raging on this accursed land for hours. Hours ago, as though to look down on this unhallowed ground, A dark figure riding a demonic horse was standing her ground with her sword pointing forward. Ray-ar-a-air. Charge. Let the armies of the sorceress kingdom eliminate all who would stand against us. The one who shouted was Malik, leading more than 20,000 soldiers of Nazarick to battle. Several flags holding the banner of the sorceress kingdom rode forward at the hands of the cavalries that were holding them. And thousands of mid-tier undead beings, from death knights and death cavalries to the headless Dullahan warriors, wraith hunters, and flying old skeletal dragons, and several more of such unholy undead creatures, followed them to battle under the orders of their commander. There were also several high-tier undead and magical beasts, provided by Ora Bellafiora, the beast tamer and master of guerrilla warfare, who was participating in this battle alongside Malik within the ranks of their army. Malik, Ora, remember your job. If you discovered any high-level angels or other such monsters within their ranks, it is your job to eliminate them with your beasts and the vassals that I gave to you. I have to focus my attention on the enemy army before us, so you handle the high-tier ones. In response, a beautiful-looking dark elf female answered. Ora, yes, Malik-sama. Be at ease. They won't cause any problems for you while you fight. Malik nodded her head in satisfaction and gratitude, and turned her eyes to regard the enemy army on the other side of the field. On the other side of field flew countless flags. All of them bore a different insignia than those of the sorceress kingdom. No, these flags showed the image of a mighty angel of the highest order, a seraph Empyrean, an angel of the highest order said to be the closest to the throne of God, the sigil of the Grand Holy Republic. For the Holy Republic, may the light of all that is holy destroy these foul and evil creatures. A holy knight in shining armor, wielding a holy sword, and riding a beautiful white horse that shone with holy light announced so, and pointed his sword toward the unholy legions of the sorceress kingdom. In response to his battle cry, more than 20,000 angels flew into battle. Most of these angels were of the second sphere of angels, called powers, virtues, and dominions. Powers were a warrior type of angels. Being warrior angels, they also oppose evil spirits, especially those that make use of the matter in the universe, and often cast evil spirits to detention places. These angels are usually represented as soldiers wearing full armor and helmet, and also having defensive and offensive weapons such as shields and spears or chains respectively. Notable types of Theses angels were Hell Guards, White Champions, and Light Knights. Virtues were more of a magical types of angels. They possessed holy magical powers. They would usher in hope and positive energies in order to strengthen their allies and weaken the evil spirits and beings. They would also use their holy powers to attack or defend against evil beings. Finally, the third and the least members were dominions. They were the superiors of powers and virtues. Some of them acted as commanders of this holy army, while others would use their mighty seven-tier magic to destroy evil beings. The dominions look like divinely beautiful humans with a pair of feathered wings, much like the common representation of angels, but they may be distinguished from other groups by wielding orbs of light fastened to the heads of their scepters or on the pommel of their swords. Both sides clashed with each other, and a devastating battle took place. Both sides, the mid-tier undead and the second sphere of angels, were of extraordinary strength. So while they contested with each other on almost equal grounds, their battle caused severe damage to the surroundings. After about an hour, the ground was littered with the corpses of thousands of fallen angels and undead. From a corner of battlefield, Malik was issuing her commands to her army, while at the same time fighting against an endless army of angels. She swung her sword non-stop, and every time she would kill an angel with one or two swing of her sword. Due to the large numbers of the angels she killed, her body and face was covered with their blood. But of course, unlike the bloodless undead or the dark blood of the demons, the blood of the angels had a bright golden color. So it was more like a decoration of golden lines on her armor. She could only kill them one or two at the time. Even thought she was a level 100 player, it was still difficult to cleave her sword through two powers at the same time, especially if they were the defensive types of the Hell Guards. She looked around and saw that about 500 white champions were trying to flank them by bypassing their right flank. She immediately issued an order to about 500 death cavaliers to intercept them. Put pressure at the right flank. Do not allow them to advance to our back. The Death Cavaliers rode out to intercept them. Malik looked at the battlefield again. There was nothing but fire and blood on this land. While there was a time she would revel at carnage due to her nature as a cursed knight, this endless battles with no lasting results was starting to wear her down mentally. How many more time do I have to endure this moronic conflict? For centuries we fought against each other, and there was never any results out of this. Only chaos and destruction, she thought. She looked at the battlefield around her. When they started this fight, her army was in an orderly manner. But now in the heat of battle, most of both her units and the angels were fighting in a chaotic fight, killing each other and then looking for something else to kill. It would be in best of her interest to rally some of her soldiers around herself, so she could issue her orders in a more effective way. After all, in a large-scale battle, 100 grouped and united soldiers were more effective than 1,000 soldiers fighting randomly. Making up her mind, she sent a message to all the soldiers under her command. Normally, a person could use the message spell only between themselves and one other individual, and the message would only last for a short time. But generals could extend their message to thousands of individuals and give several orders through the extended period of their message skill. Malik, all available units, rally to me. In response to her call, less than 1,000 undead gathered around her. Most of them were death knights and soul hunters, a type of undead archers. Ooh-heya! Suddenly, she heard a terrible roar from the sky. She looked at the sky, and in that moment, her eyes went wide, and the expression on her face became that of a tired person. Malik, come on. I just want to go home now. From within the clouds, a great and mighty dragon descended on earth. On its back was an angel, wearing a pure white armor with golden lines and divine runes, and holding a white triangle shield at his left hand, where his sword was sheathed. The dragon, whose pure white scales reflected the sunlight into the eyes of all those who looked at it, opened its massive jaw, and from within its mouth, a bright blue flame could be seen. Malik immediately recognized that fire. She had tasted its heat far too well at the past to forget. Malik shouted, "Holy fire! Take cover!" The dragon unleashed its storm fire upon Malik and her soldiers. The Death Knights covered their bodies with their tower shields, but the holy fire was the bane of almost all of the undead beings. The undead had a natural racial penalty when it came to fire or holy elemental-based attacks. So holy fire, which combined both of these elemental powers in itself, was considered their greatest weakness. The fire covered the ground, and the undead in its patch were reduced to glowing ashes in mere seconds. Not even the Death Knights, with their tower shields and their special skill to reduce the damage they received, survived this attack. The only person holding her ground and standing still was Malik. But even though her WCI granted her immunity to fire, the holy element in it still damaged her. Her mount was less lucky. Even though it was a high-level magical beast, it was still badly wounded by the fire. But the attack did not end there. The white dragon, under the command of its rider, dived directly toward Malik. Malik, that was covering her wounds, looked at the dragon as it opened its jaws. Malik, she tried to gallop away, but before she could, ooh-ha-ha, the dragon grabbed Malik and her horse with its mouth. It pierced their body with its long and sharp teeth and threw them both away. Malik rolled on the ground, and her horse body lay dead on top of her. Aura, that watched this scene from afar, shouted in horror, and her eyes went wide open. Aura, Malik-sama. The dragon landed on the ground and walked straight toward Malik. Malik, who was wounded by the dragon fire and teeth, felt too weak to move. The dragon rider issued his command. Kill her. The dragon opened its jaw, ready to burn down Malik to the ashes, when suddenly, Aura, precise shot. An arrow, shot by Aura, flew through the air and stroked the shoulder of the holy dragon. Rarer, the dragon roared in pain and shook its body. The knight dismounted in order to pull out the arrow from its shoulder. Aura rushed to Malik's side and lifted the corpse of her horse from her body. Aura, up general, up. This is no place to die. She grabbed Malik's hand and helped her to stand up. Malik was still wounded, but she could muster up the strength to stand. Aura, who could see that she was badly damaged, drew a black-colored potion out of her pocket and spilled it on Malik's body. Malik wounds healed in a few seconds. Undead beings would take damage when exposed to healing medicine and positive energy. They could only be healed by negative energy. But this potion was unlike other healing potions. Its black-colored liquid was filled with negative energy. So while it would be poison to the living, it would heal the undead. Malik looked at Aura with gratitude. Malik, thank you, Aura. I owe you one. Aura, no need to thank me. Just don't let yourself be killed so easily. I don't know how to look at Ain Sama if something like that happened. Malik, get over it. Do you think I would die so easily? Sorry to interrupt. The voice of the Paladin Knight brought them back to their senses. The white dragon was nowhere to be seen. It was likely that he had sent it away for some reason. Malik directed her hostile gaze to the paladin that stood before her. Malik, Artanis. Long time no see. Artanis. He was one of the high counselors of the Republic. An angel of the highest order, Seraphim. He stood as the strongest paladin of the entire Republic. His strength was feared even among the guardians of Nazarick. And it was for a good reason. Because he was the owner of a special job class called the World Guardian. There were certain types of job classes in Yggdrasil that had the title of World attached to them. This job classes gave their users special powers and sometimes off-the-chart powers. They were also incredibly difficult classes to achieve, with only a handful of players ever managing to obtain them. World Disaster. Restricted to magic casters. A class that gave its user incredible offensive magical power. World Destroyer. A warrior class that gave its user incredible offensive physical power. World Champion. A warrior class that granted its user great offensive power and also very high physical and magical defensive strength. But said abilities were not of the chart. They were simply at the utmost limit of a warrior ability. World Guardian. A class that granted its user incredible and off-the-chart defensive power, both in the physical and magical defenses. Their offensive power was not any higher than other level 100 beings, but their defensive power was well above them, even stronger than the defenses of a world champion. Typically, one would need to use magic of the 8th tier and above or legendary or divine class weapons to be able to breach through their defenses. Artanis was one such paladin. His presence in the field would be a great obstacle in their patch to achieve victory. Artanis bowed his head in a courteous manner, something that Malik and Aura took as a mockery. Artanis, I am pleased to meet you as well, though I hope that for once, it could have been under better circumstances. Malik, if you wished for a peaceful meeting, then perhaps you should have sent an invitation to a party, not to attack our territory and start ruining our fortresses and destroying our forces to get my attention, again. Artanis, first of all, it was our territory before you occupied it at the last war. And second, you have put every living species under your tyrannical rule. They are all slaves in all but name. You have taken the people rights and freedom. We fight to restore freedom to this world. Ask yourself who is on the wrong side here. Malik, oh really? Is that what you believe? Do you think your republic has done any better? I think you are the ones that got this wrong. You have given the people more freedom that they needed. Under your blind democracy and capitalism, the rich grew richer and the poor grew poorer. You have only given the people the illusion of having freedom and equal chances. How many of your people have actually managed to rise above their social class, huh? How many are living below the poverty line? While in the Sorceress Kingdom, a person with enough talent and hard work can actually rise to a high status. The number of the poor and unhealthy people in our kingdom is far less than yours. The people don't need false illusions and capitalism. They need a shepherd that can give them peace and prosperity. Artanis, your ideas will ultimately lead to the demise of all that is good and worth living for. I grow tired of talking. Let's get this over with. Artanis drew his sword from his shield and took a stand. Aura drew out her whip and readied herself for combat. But Malik stopped her. Malik, no Aura. This fight is mine and mine alone. Aura, but Malik Sama. It is too dangerous for you to fight him alone. Her concerns were well placed. Malik could only be counted as a second-rate warrior when compared to Nazarick Guardians. While Artanis was a top-class warrior who had bested some of the strongest warriors in Nazarick, such as Cositus, in combat. Malik, don't misunderstand. I am not doing this out of pride or something stupid like that, but because I need you to take care of that. Malik pointed her hand toward the Republic army, where the holy dragon that had left Artanis' side was wreaking havoc upon their army. Malik, He is here to stall us both while that dragon destroys our army. Take care of that reptile before it wipe out our remaining forces. I can take care of this myself. Aura nodded and left to deal with the holy dragon. Though her disagreement was clear on her face, she obeyed the Supreme One order. Malik took a battle stand before Artanis. She knew too well that she was very likely to be outmatched against him, who was a much better warrior than her, but she could not back down. Artanis took a battle stand as well. His shield at his left hand was before his body, while his sword was hidden behind it. The two of them stare each other down, and in a flash of light, holy strike! Artanis launched forward with incredible speed and slashed his sword toward Malik. She immediately responded by blocking his sword with her own. Even though Artanis had greater physical strength than Malik, he was using a one-handed sword, while Malik was holding her long sword with both of her hands, so she managed to block his attack. But she didn't account for his next move. Shield bash. Artanis attacked Malik with the pointy end of his shield. Even though it was not made deal damage to opponent, he managed to blow Malik back and unbalance her foot. Malik was blown back for several meters before she landed on ground. She immediately resumed her guard and readied herself to strike. Artanis, on the other hand, relaxed himself and dropped his guard as a mockery. Artanis, you are a strong, brave, and a capable commander, there is no doubt about it. But I am much stronger than you as a warrior, my lady. Malik, I am no one's lady. Artanis, oh really? So tell me, do you bleed? Malik, I ain't got time to bleed, because I am too busy focusing on making you bleed. Heavy strike. She attacked him with her sword, ready to swing it down like an avalanche. But Artanis immediately blocked her attack with his shield. Aiming his counterattack at Malik's left shoulder, he slashed his sword downward, but Malik raised her left hand and interrupted his attack with a spell. Wall of stone. A huge stone wall sprouted from the ground and surrounded Malik. It collided with Artanis' strike. The stone bent and shattered and disappeared as it absorbed Artanis' strike. Malik launched her own counterattack and thrust her blade into Artanis' chest. But while his armor could not block the attack of her divine-class sword, it was able to prevent her sword from dealing a mortal wound. Before Malik could launch another attack, Artanis kicked her in the belly and blow her back. Evil Slayer. Holy strike. Artanis decided to release one of his strongest holy attacks. He launched forward with incredible speed. His sword, which now shined with holy light and brilliant radiance, aimed for Malik's neck. Malik tried to block his attack with her sword, but instead of breaking her defense with his sword, Artanis slammed his shield at Malik's right hand and unbalanced her swing. While Malik was unable to properly defend herself from Artanis' strike, she managed to sway his sword away from her neck and head. Artanis' sword instead hit her chest and carved its way into it where her heart would have been. She screamed in pain and backed away. She looked at her chest and saw that from within her wound fire, and not blood, was leaking out. She was starting to be consumed by rage and blood frenzy. She directed all of her rage toward Artanis. But before she could make another move, shield bash. Artanis, not allowing his opponent to recover her balance, attacked her again with his shield. The shield and Malik's body collided, and she was thrown far away. Malik's back hit a half-ruined short tower, several times harder than it had hit the ground the first time. Dirt rose from where she had hit the ground. But this time Malik did not stood back up. Her body laid motionless on the ground, her fire leaking from her wounds and dirt sighting on her lifeless body. But it did not end there. The tower, that had taken a terrible hit and that its stone wall was bent and shattered, crumbled, and a huge amount of timbers and bricks fall upon Malik's motionless body. Artanis looked down at his defeated opponent and her stony grave. You were unwise to fight me alone, my lady. You should have called for reinforcements. You might have stood a chance in that case. Well, it doesn't matter now. With their commander dead, it won't take long before we root all this army out. Suddenly, he felt something abnormal was going on. He felt an incredible heat at his back, and when he turned around, a great roar thundered across the battlefield. He looked back and saw that the debris where Malik's body was buried was engulfed in a gray mist. A terrible sound came from within the debris, a voice that was screaming in pain. The mist that covered the debris amplified and covered the whole thing. The timbers and bricks swelled up. As they collapsed to the ground, something massive slowly stood up amongst them instead of Malik. Artanis, Malik Al. There stood a tall figure, about 3 meters tall. Its body was clad in black robes. On its back were 2 white wings that seemed to belong to an angel, which were clapping around. A black hood with white edges covered its head. But beneath the hood there was no head, only darkness and shadow. This was Malik's true form as a Dullahan lord. Her human appearance was just a front, much like Shaltir and Albedo forms. In this form she was much stronger in her physical abilities, strong enough to even fight against a level 100 warrior. But she could not use any magic or command her troops. Her transformation was triggered by her blood frenzy, so she was not in a normal state of mind, but was driven by rage and bloodlust. Artanis looked at this bizarre scene with calmness. He knew very well that many heteromorphic beings had a second form. He himself, as an angel, had a non-human form as well. Artanis, so this is how you really look like. To be honest, you look even more ravishing than before. Several powers and virtues that were attracted by the development around them gathered in the scene, readying themselves to attack. Just as the undead had an affinity to attack living beings, angels also had the affinity to attack evil beings when they were nearby. Powers readied their blades, while virtues pointed their hand toward Malik in order to cast their holy spells. Holy Ray. Several beams of holy light flew toward Malik. She was hit by countless blasts, but because of her immunity to low-tier spells, she was not hurt in the slightest. She clenched her fists, and in that moment, Rhea Awa Air. The air shook violently. Black light and gray mist came from every direction and spread from Malik, who stood at the center of it. Artanis, who was a seasoned holy warrior, recognized the meaning behind that behavior and immediately took cover behind his shield. It was only for a moment, but the results were clear. Every living being within 50-meter radius of Malik were wiped out in an instant after getting engulfed by the wave of darkness. All of the powers and the virtues were destroyed. Even the grass on the ground had lost all of its water content and became dead and dry. Artanis, that had only taken a few steps back from being subjected to a storm of darkness, came out of the cover of his shield. Artanis, I was wondering why an undead being like herself had chosen a name like Malik al-Mut, Angel of Death. So this is why. The aura that Malik had just released was called the Aura of Death. It was a powerful attack that could kill every being below level 60 that did not have protection or resistance toward necromancy and death magic. Malik rose her head, or better said the hood, considering that she did not have any head in her true form, and directed her gaze toward Artanis. Even though she had no visible eye, Artanis could feel a great amount of bloodlust and hatred directed toward himself form within that dark hood. He took a battle stand, put his shield in front and readied his sword arm, and then he jumped forward with incredible speed toward Malik. Malik leaped toward him as well, and a black long sword was materialized in her hand. Before they clashed, Malik kicked the ruined wall with her feet. The stone shattered, and its debris flew toward Artanis. He covered himself from the debris by his shield, and then swung his sword toward Malik. Malik dogged his sword, and it hit the ground. She swung her long sword toward Artanis. He tried to swing his sword at her in response. Because he was holding a one-handed sword in his hand, and Malik was holding a long sword with both of her hands, he was thrown back. Clearly Malik had stronger physical power in her true form. Shield slam. Artanis slammed his shield at Malik's left leg and threw her off balance. Malik's back hit the ground. Arg! Malik roared like a beast. He jumped upon her, ready to thrust his sword into her chest. But she dogged him and stood up again. Artanis' sword hit the ground again. Artanis. This is getting frustrating. There were several angels outside the death aura radius that flew toward Malik to attack, or were just passing nearby to attack other undead beings. Malik grabbed a power angel that was flying above her with her left hand, and then she slammed Artanis with it, as if she was using a club. Artanis did not hesitate and slashed the angel body in two with his sword. But the attack did not end there. Malik swung her sword at Artanis' belly. He rooted his feet on the ground and tried to absorb the attack with his shield. The sword and the shield collided, and he was thrown back several meters. Since he was strong on his foot, he did not lose his balance, neither he was thrown in the air. but he continued backward until his back hit a wall. The stone bent, and his form was carved on the wall. He took some damage of all this attacks, but was not badly hurt. He readied himself again and launched again toward Malik. Malik launched an attack of her own, but this time she held her sword with one hand. Just before Artanis could swing his sword at her again, she clenched her fist like an iron ball and threw it toward Artanis. How stupid. Has she completely lost her mind to savagery? Unless she had any class as a monk or martial artist, that attack would be completely useless. However, that was a Navi way of thinking. Before her fist struck Artanis, it was covered by a dark flame. The moment the flame touched Artanis' armor, he screamed, "Ah!" The small flame in Malik's hand covered his entire body, and he felt that his very soul was burning. He was thrown out of balance and on the ground. Arg Hell Flame. There was only one type of fire that could cause this much damage to an angle. The fires of hell. It was something that Malik had conjured with her WCI. Even though she was in a fit of rage, she could still use some of her abilities. Artanis tried to suppress the heat and stand up, but before he could, Malik slashed her sword downward on his body before her could react. A direct hit with full force was received. His shoulder was cut open and golden blood leaked out of his body. Even his divine armor could not stop such a powerful direct hit from a divine sword. Malik kicked his body with her foot. Artanis' wounded body was thrown back for several meters through dust and dirt before it stopped. He lost his grip on his sword and shield as well. His shield was dropped a few meters before him while his sword was at his back. Even his helmet was dropped of his head. Rhea Awayer. Artanis looked at Malik, who was some distance away, and smiled when he heard her roar. Even though he was injured, it was not to a degree that could be considered a mortal wound. But his smile froze when he saw Malik flew toward him with incredible speed, in order to finish him off with a single swing of her sword. He was unarmed, and judging from his previous clash with Malik, he had to pick either his sword or his shield and hold it with both of his hands in order to defend himself. He looked at the shield before him and the sword at his back. His hesitation didn't even last for a moment. And right before Malik could swing her sword down on him, he picked up his sword. Artanis. Yeert. He blocked Malik's attack with his sword. Because he was holding it with both of his hands, he managed to stop her sword from carving into his shoulder again. But his next move caught Malik off guard. He dragged his sword beneath her sword. Malik's sword hit the ground. But before she could raise it again, Artanis. Yeert. Artanis slashed his sword at Malik's right arm, and with a single stroke of his blade, Malik's right hand was chopped off. Malik. Errorf, she roared in pain. Her health was already in a dangerously low state from her first clash with Artanis, and the loss of her sword arm put her in an even more dangerous state. But before she could react, Artanis picked up his shield as Malik was still in shock and attacked her again without delay. Artanis. Holy Strike. Evil Slayer. He infused the holy power within his sword into Malik's body in the instant they made contact. This was an elementary technique for paladins, and it was originally intended to be used in the moment one's blade bit into a foe's flesh, but that did not mean it could not be used as a touch attack. Since most of the divine power simply exploded on the surface, it would not do much harm, but he had still used it anyway, because he knew it was very effective against undead beings, and that Malik must have been in low health. He had also infused it with his skill, Evil Slayer, and delivered a blow with all of his might. His sword hit where Malik's belly was supposed to be and infused it with holy power. But his attack did not end there. Artanis. Shield Bash. He bashed the front of his shield at Malik. Malik, who was still in pain and shock, was thrown back at yet again. Her back hit the ground for the third time. Malik's form was slowly covered by a gray mist, and she reverted back to her human form. Her current status was too pitiful. Her body was covered in wounds, with fire leaking from all over it. Her right hand was chopped off. In short, she had lost the ability to fight. Artanis walked toward Malik with calm steps. Malik felt that all of her strength had left her body. She could not even stand up. Artanis stood before his defeated opponent. He raised his sword, ready to deliver the final blow. Artanis. Any last words? Malik looked at him again, and saw Artanis' face for the first time. His eyes were paler than stone and darker than milk. His hair was pure white and shining, with golden hairs between them. His skin was neither black or white, but a mixture of both that seemed to radiate a little because of his golden blood. He was beardless, but had thick white eyebrows. His face was somewhat handsome, though not a great beauty. She could see the resolve in his eyes. Malik, do what you will. But promise me one thing. Artanis, what is it? Malik, don't let this wars continue. They have brought nothing but pain and misery upon this world. This endless conflict between us must come to an end. You know it just as well as me, that neither the Republic nor the Sorceress Kingdom will ever achieve any good results from this battle. Please, for the sake of all of the people who live on this world, convince your fellow counselors to sue for peace. Artani's eyes went wide. He looked like to be in deep thought. Just as Malik was wondering about what was going on in his head, he lowered his sword. What is he doing? She thought to herself. Artanis looked like he had a change of heart. To Malik's surprise, he sheathed his sword and extended his hand toward her. She felt uncertain, but she decided to grab his hand. He pulled Malik up and helped her to stand on her feet. Malik was still looking at him with confusion. Artanis looked at Malik's confused face and said, "You are not the only one who feels tired of this endless war. I too wish to see this conflict come to an end. But if we are to achieve peace, we need to learn to forgive each other and work together. Does that mean you too wish for peace?" "I do. Will you help me on your side?" Malik was surprised by this sudden change in attitude. She even thought that it might just be an act to cause some form of damage to the Sorceress Kingdom in the future. But for some reasons, she felt that Artanis was speaking the truth. She made up her mind and answered Artanis. "I will. As a gesture of good faith, I will withdraw my army from this battle. We allow you to settle at your previously owned land again." "Thank you, my lady. It means a lot. I will tell the commander of this army to stand down as well. I told you, I am no one's lady." Okay. I'm sorry, princess. Somehow it make it feel worse." Malik issued a mental command to all of her soldiers, and they all retreated back to the Sorceress Kingdom territory. The armies of Holy Republic did not give chase and instead returned to their own domain. Back to President/Ain's office. "Ains, Malik? Are you okay?" Malik was lost in her thoughts, but Ain's voice brought her back to reality. "Malik, yes, father. Sorry, I was just shocked to see this. How is it possible? The world guardian Artanis died a long time ago. Could it be that he had been resurrected?" This was the first thought that came to her mind. But Ains had a different idea. "Ains, I'm not sure. While that possibly can't be completely discarded, I think it is more likely that this is someone else that's just using his equipment, judging by the amount of strength he displayed in his fight against me. If he was indeed Artanis, it is very likely that I might not have survived, even with Cositus' aid. Malik, but all of this in Angle Army. These high-level opponent who used the equipment of those players from Holy Republic. Could it be? Demiurge. I thought that we had eliminated all of them 100 years ago, in the 7th war that took place after their betrayal. But it seems my assumption was incorrect. The enemy survived, and they had taken all of this time, hiding from our eyes and ears, preparing themselves to strike at us. I can't even dare myself to apologize to you, Ains Sama. If I was more careful, none of this would have happened. Ains, the fault does not lie with you alone, Demiurge. I too thought that the enemy was gone, as did the others. But clearly we were all mistaken. What matters now is what we are going to do about it." The Guardians all looked at each other. The first one to speak was Mare. "Mare, I think we have to resurrect my sister and Yuri at first. We can't let Nazarick become weak because of the absence of one of the Guardians." The other nodded in agreement. The servants of Nazarick could be resurrected by Ains using the guild staff, but depending on their level, resurrection cost a considerable amount of money. In order to resurrect a level 100 being like Aura, they would have to spend 500 million gold coins. But Nazarick treasury contained hundreds of billions of gold coins, so it was not a big concern for them. Ains, Pandora's actor, will oversee preparation for that. Some of you go with him and help him to transport the necessary gold coins from the treasury. Albedo. Afterwards, we need to tighten our security, increase the number of spies, and alert all of Nazardom armies. If they intend to strike at our territories, we must be ready. That's easier said than done. Malik thought. It was true that they had many powerful mid-tier undead as their soldiers and hundreds of high-tier monsters as subordinates. However, it was somewhat impossible to employ them all in an effective manner. The reason behind it was simple. The Sorceress Kingdom territory was too large. Like all other empires, their vast territories was both a boon and a bane. Since the last war, where they had lost so many of their soldiers, Ains and Malik had focused their effort in rebuilding the Nazarick. Over the span of 100 years, they managed to restore the Nazarick numbers to about 200,000 soldiers. Out of them, about 50,000 were on guard in the gigantic fortresses outside Nazarick, while the rest were spread out around the world to enforce the Nazarick order and act as peacekeepers. But by just considering their vast domain, it was clear they would need to add even more soldiers to Nazarick. Malik, it's not going to be that easy, Albedo. We are still rebuilding our army. If the enemy has an army under their command as well, they would start their job by attacking the Nazarick soldiers, one fortress at a time. I know it is something that I would do in their place. Besides, we need to consider their religious followers as well. If the 7 or even a single one of them returns, there will be millions who would join them. For much of their history, the Sorceress Kingdom had followed the policy of religious freedom. This was not by any means born out of any liberalism ideas or their belief in rights of freedom. In fact, the Sorceress Kingdom government looked down on clergy and temples as relics of more primitive times, but useful to placate lower classes with promises of a better life to come after death. Thus, they promoted religious tolerance in order to keep their subjects divided and prevent them from unifying under the banner of a single god. At the same time, however, they also trained their own clerics and founded their own temples in the name of the 41 supreme beings of Nazarick. With the Ains Olgaun, the supreme overlord of death, the head of all the supreme beings, and the ruler of the Sorceress Kingdom, as the central figure. They also had a shrine dedicated to the worship of Malik al-Mulk as the goddess of war, alongside many other shrines to worship the other departed supreme beings. Slowly, they expanded their influence, and the religion of the 41 supreme beings replaced other older faiths. Since the last great war that ended with the destruction of the Republic, the government tried very hard to convert the subjects of the Republic to the faith of the 41. While it seemed that they had succeeded, it was also known that there were still many people who practiced the holy faith of the Republic, both in public and in secret. If they were to rise in revolt, the damage would be very grave to say the least. Ains, then what do you suggest we do? Malik, I can't think of anything new at this point. We won't be able to make an effective strategy against an enemy that we can't even see. Until they come out of the shadow, or better yet we make them come out of the shadow, we shall continue our own work here. I came back to take some officers and a few of our legions to help with my work in Essos. Ains, are you serious? Even after everything that has happened, everything that is happening right now, you still want to continue that little project you started over there? I need you here, with me, helping to destroy our enemies. We can't afford to lose the commander of our forces, especially when we might be facing another war. Malik, I understand, Father. You are right. But I am not doing this for myself. I started something out there. I conquered a city in the name of the Sorceress Kingdom of Ains Olgaun. More than that, I also freed the slaves from their master yokes and started a revolution. If I just abandon my campaign over there, while I have staked our kingdom name, what image do you think it will left of us in the people's minds? I do this for us, or we may not get another chance. You know that we need new lands. This world is choking with overpopulation. Ains, even so, we will be troubled if you were absent all the time. Malik thought about Ain's words. It was true that she could not simply abandon her campaign in Mir. If they were to one day conquer the continents Essos and Westeros, they had to succeed. The whole reason they had chosen Mir, instead of some other kingdom in Westeros, as their first outpost was because of its strategic location. Since Mir was on the coast of the Narrow Sea, it was relatively close to Westeros and the Slavers' Bay, and they allowed their forces to be easily transported by the sea. And unlike Westeros that was united under the authority of the Iron Throne, the free cities were all city-states with no monarchy, so it was rather easy to conquer one. But from the information they gathered, they knew that their military strength was overwhelmingly superior to the lords of Westeros or Essos, so it would not require much effort for them. Suddenly, an imaginary light bulb appeared above Malik's head. Malik, I have an idea. I don't need to be present at all times to make this work. I can only be there for important matters. Instead of myself or our high-level vassals, I think we can leave this task to the 7 sisters. The Seven Sisters was the name given to the 7 daughters of Malik. They were all adopted from high-class noble families or were chosen by Ains or Malik for their talents and potential. Their overall level was not very high, comparable to Pleiades. But considering their task, it was more than enough. Ains, are you sure? It's true we can work without them here and that they are all adapted, but you raised them all since their childhood, with the exception of their eldest. Are you sure that you want to drop such heavy responsibilities on their shoulders? Malik, I raised them all to be strong, in their own way. Alone they may be weak, but together they are a formidable force. I am sure that they won't let us down. She said so with absolute confidence. That was because she had faith in their abilities and their resolve and their royalty. Ains, what do you think, Demiurge? Demiurge fixed his glasses. Demiurge, I think Malik Sama is right. They are all more than capable enough to handle matters of that level. We won't be troubled by their absence as much as we would by dispatching a guardian or high-level subordinates. But I have to ask you, Malik Sama, how many soldiers you are going to take with you? Malik went into deep thought. It was clear that she would require a considerable amount of military force, plus politics and economical game, in order to secure a strong foothold on Essos and Westeros. When she was coming back, she intended to bring about 10,000 mid-tier undead back with her to Mir to serve as their main military force. But now, considering the number of their soldiers and the fact that they might face a new war and rebellion back in their homeland, Malik, I think 3,000 mid-tier undead will suffice for now. I can add a few more every day to their number. Plus, considering their military strength, it would be more than enough. Albedo, are you sure that would be enough? We all know that our military force is overwhelmingly superior to them. But while 3,000 mid-tier undead is enough to beat any army in the field, it is not enough number to keep the peace in the conquered lands. With so many cities and towns, you would be forced to divide your soldiers in several smaller groups, which would only threaten the stability of your rule. How do you propose to fix that problem? Malik, I will deal with that problem when the times come. I have already acquired additional forces from Esso's own manpower to help with that matter, and I'm sure the first sister can handle that problem as well. Demiurge, her, you say? Out of all the 7 sisters, there was one person who stood atop of the rest. She was the leader of the 7 sisters, and the very first of them to be ever adapted by the Supreme One. She was also one of the transcended ones, a former human who had risen through the ranks of Nazarick and was granted the right to transcend into a higher life form, and was also granted the position of the area guardian of the Western human countries. Her strength was neither in magic nor in physical combat. In fact, she had no levels as a warrior, and her limited magical powers were not in the combat. And yet, she was considered to be the strongest and most dangerous out of all the 7 sisters because of her unmatched intelligence that rivaled even that of Demiurge's. Malik, I am sure she will revel at the opportunity to play the Game of Thrones once more. After all, it's been a long time. Demiurge, it is as you say. I still remember the day that I first met her. It was at the very first year that we arrived in this world. Even then, I saw the endless potential in her. How wise it was of you to adapt her into your household. Malik smiled with pride. Malik, it is decided then. Once Father has resurrected Aura and Yuri, I will summon my daughters and call them to service. Demiurge, yes, Malik Sama. Malik, I want you to explain the situation to her. Inform her of all that she is required to do. I will tell the others their job as well. I wonder what are they doing right now? Demiurge bowed his head. Demiurge, understood. I will call the area guardian Princess Renner at once. The port city of Marillion/Harbor Midnight. Marillion City. It was a port city located at the shores of the Sapphire Gulf, one of the greatest ports in the world and a major center of all trade in the southern continent of the Sorceress Kingdom, which made it into one of the greatest, richest, and most powerful cities of the Sorceress Kingdom. It was a wealthy city filled and settled mostly by merchants and traders, and behind the scenes, the smugglers. This city is old and ancient, dating back to the days before the rise of the Sorceress Kingdom and the age of the old gods, making it about 1,600 years old. The city is about 8 leagues widespread in every direction. Several topless towers and floating buildings can be seen from the streets. Its population is estimated to be about 20 million. Most of them are workers, sailors, or traders. The climate is hot and humid. The air is hot and heavy. beyond the waterfront, and its breezes the streets and alleys are hot enough to drown a man in his own sweat. The sullen wet heat of the city saps the non-native strength and could leave them feeling dirty. There is also a heavy smell in the air, rich and rank and pervasive. There is fish in it, flowers and smoke and some kind of animal dongs, also something sweet and earthly and something dead and rotten. And just as some of the people thought, there was a good reason for all of it. Over the centuries, this city, which started as a small fisher village but expanded due to its naturally formed harbor and strategic location, became a center of trade. But it also fell to the corruption that would eventually sneak in all wealthy and powerful cities. There were many crime syndicates and underworld smugglers who placed their base in this city, and they made enormous wealth by conducting business with legal traders by offering them goods for a low price without having to pay taxes. They also transported illegal narcotics from their hidden farms in the remote islands of the ocean and sell them in the underground markets of the Sorceress Kingdom. And tonight, one such syndicate was transporting the newly arrived cargo into the city. At one of the harbors, several men were disembarking the cargo of a newly arrived ship. All of them were men of the underworld society, illegal workers, thieves, assassins, hired mercenaries, and etc. Several groups were working together. Some of them were disembarking the cargo out of the containers, while others were placing the cargo inside the carriage's hold. They were doing their work when a man arrived at the scene with a couple of bodyguards, and everyone stopped their work. He was a middle-aged man whose hair had started to become white. His face was somewhat charming and yet quite serious. His suit and bodyguard company gave the people around him that he was a professional businessman, likely a wealthy merchant in this city of merchants. The men who had stopped their work knew better than that. The person who appeared was one of the major bosses in the smuggling syndicates, Sir Garrett Bane. In public view, he was a respected merchant and an honorable figure. But behind his gentle attire, he was actually a man with a black heart who did not hesitate to stampede the people beneath his foot and corrupt their bodies and minds if he could gain any profit from it. The men stood aside, and Garrett opened one of baskets and looked within it. Inside the baskets were several stuffed adorable puppy toys. He picked up the toy and looked at it, before turning his gaze to the men before him. "Garrett, what is this?" "Huh?" The men said nothing. He drew a small knife from his pocket and opened the belly of the toy. Afterwards, he reached within and drew a small barred package out. Within it was a yellow powder. It was a newly developed narcotic called slow-mo. It had the effect of making the user feel like time was slowing down, giving them a false fantasy pleasure. While it was said that using this drug had no bad effects, as they say for every harmful drug, its extended use would cause the people's mind to actually slow down and reduce their intelligence to the bare minimal IQ. Garrett Bane placed the package in his pocket, and then looked at the men who were watching him. "Garrett, continue your work, gentlemen. This bears must go directly to the narrow man." He returned to his luxurious coach while the men nodded and kept on disembarking the cargo. Within several meters of them, where another group were emptying the containers, one of the men noticed that the door of one of the containers was open and a few of the boxes were left behind. "I forgot to empty that one. Boss is going to kill me." He went to retrieve the boxes and bring them to the carriages. Because it was midnight, the only sources of light were the lamps infused with the continual light spell. So inside the container was dark. He poked his head in, and in that moment, "Hey!" something from within grabbed him and pulled him into the darkness. He tried to scream, but before he could even get the chance to increase his voice and ask for help, his voice was silenced forever. The others heard a small voice from far away, though it did not sound like anything major. The life in underground society had taught them to never be careless. "Wait here. We will check it out." Another two men, holding on their daggers beneath their robe, went toward the direction from which they heard the voice. They looked at the container with open door and slowly approached it. Suddenly, all lights went out. The lamps in their area were broken down in a moment, and darkness covered their ground. They looked around in full alarm. Suddenly, they felt a presence nearby, and a shadow appeared behind them in the darkness, but before they could show any reaction, their throat was sliced open. The others, who heard the sound of the lamps breaking, became fully alerted and drew their weapons. Some of them drew their bows and readied their arrows. "Go. Move in one group and find the intruder." Considering their current status, it was wise to stand together. If the opponents were several beings, they could easily be spotted. But since if they were being taken down one at a time, it was very likely that their foe was one person, someone who knew how to hide from their sight. Several men began to patrol the container's area. One of them, who was holding a bow, kept looking around for any sign, so that he may shoot whoever that was causing all of this to happen. One of them, terrified by the shadow and the death of his fellow workers, tried to run away, but his forehead was pierced along with the iron helmet. His comrade shook wildly for a moment before falling like a kite with its string cut. The metal armor made a deafening sound in the dark night. He prayed for someone to hear this sound and rush over, but no one should be stupid enough to do that. The bowman, who watched a sharp throwing knife kill his comrade, looked around. His moral was completely gone. Suddenly, he saw a shadow, or perhaps a person in black robes, moving with incredible speed between the containers. He fired his arrow, but missed. 3 more times this happened. He tried to replace his fear with anger. "Where are you?" he shouted, and received his answer at that very moment. "Here," a soft voice whispered in his ear from behind. At that moment, he felt the fear of death for the first time. He turned around and screamed at the sight he saw before him, But his killer did not hesitate to break his neck with a single move of her hands. The others, about 10 men, who were watching another area filled with containers, heard the screams of their fellow workers. They all gathered together and formed a circle, their back to each other in a closed space as they guarded their rear. They opened their eyes and sharpened their ears, so that they would not miss anything that might approach. But even that was not good enough. Suddenly, something that looked like an iron ball was dropped on the ground between them, at the center of their circle. Before they could wonder what it was, the ball opened and an enormous amount of smoke began to spread amongst them. They all covered their mouth and started to cough, and in that moment, the shadow that was hunting them down descended upon them and killed them all before any of them could notice her present. Underscore at the same time, Garrett Bane heard the screams form outside. He left his coach to see one of his bodyguards. "Garrett, what is going here?" "Bodyguard, sir, it seems there is a problem. You better leave this place." Suddenly, he saw several of his workers get engulfed in a black smoke. He realized that something dangerous was going on here, so he decided to flee. "Garrett, leave no traces. Kill the intruder if you could. Retreat if you can, but don't leave any evidence behind." "Understood, bodyguard." "Yes, sir." At Ankh, before he could finish his sentence, a throwing knife pierced his throat. Blood sprayed all over Garrett Bane, causing him to feel afraid for his life for the first time in a long time. He immediately ran back toward his coach to leave, but before he could reach it, Ignite, his luxurious coach, was engulfed in fire. The horses went wild because of their fear of fire and ran away. "Damn it," he cursed. But when he saw his other bodyguards begun to drop one by one, he forsake it all and ran away in horror. He ran away as far as he could, away from the harbor, inside the streets nearby. But even then he felt that he was being followed by the mysterious figure that had killed his men. He entered a dark alley and hid inside the shadow, his dagger drawn out. He watched outside of the darkness in fear and with trembling hands, hoping that no one could find him now. But his hope was futile. From within the darkness, behind him, a pair of blue eyes appeared. They seemed to shine with unnatural light in the darkness. But Garrett did not show any reaction, because he did not feel the presence of anyone nearby. 2 hands extended slowly from the darkness toward his neck, and once they reached him, one hand grabbed his neck while the other covered his mouth, preventing him from screaming. I thought this would be more entertaining. How disappointing. That female voice, which sounded like it belonged to a predator, was cold and devoid of any emotions. There was no gentleness or sweetness in it, only fear and intimidation. She lifted his neck and placed her mouth on it. In that moment, he felt the sharp teeth that penetrated his skin. He could feel the warmth leaving his body and his life force slowly fading away. It was in that moment that he realized the horrifying truth. The monster that killed his men, that was killing him, was a vampire. He wanted to scream in terror, ask for aid from anyone who might hear him in this dark night and dark alley. But he could not. But then, another figure revealed itself. "Hi there, what are you doing?" The vampire, that had already sucked more than 2 liters of her victim blood, stopped her sucking of blood and removed her bite. She then dropped Garrett's half-life body to the ground. With all the blood he lost, Garrett was too weak to stand up or talk. He did not even dare to look back at the monster that was feasting on his blood moments ago. Instead, he looked at the intruder who had just saved his life. Although the vampire from before had a slender body hidden behind her black, tattered robe, the person that had arrived possessed an overwhelmingly huge physique, standing 7 foot tall. Enough to make one think of a huge rock. At a glance, the body could be described as plump, but not because it was fat. First, the arms were as thick as tree trunks. In order to support the head, the neck was as thick as an average woman's thighs, and the head resting on top of it was a square. The chin was wide as to better clench the teeth for power. The yellow eyes for scanning the surroundings looked like the eyes belonging to a carnivore. The brown hair was cut short strictly for functionality. The chest behind his clothes was conspicuously bloated by muscles trained over and over. It was the puffed chest of a strong warrior who favored strength above all else. Garrett looked at the man before him and his equipment as well. He was dressed like a mercenary. There was no armor on his body. He held a big halberd that was 7 foot tall. He immediately reached a judgment. This man must be a mercenary who is here to claim a reward. If I get to him, he might help me for a promise of gold. He slowly crawled his way toward him, moving on the ground like a worm. The vampire that was focused on person before her did not even seem to care about him anymore. What are you doing here? This is my city. You have no business here. The intruder simply snorted and puffed his chest. I ran out of business in my home. I thought I'd come here and say hello. After all, it's been a long time since we last met, but I can see that you have been quite busy all this time. Garrett Bane, whom almost managed to crawl his way before this newcomer, grabbed his boots with his bloodied hands and mustered all of his remaining strength to plea for help. Help me. Save me, and I will give 1,000 number 3,000 gold pieces as reward. Please. 3,000 gold piece was a ridiculously high amount of money. Most people would work their entire lives, and they would never be able to earn such a massive amount of money. But the answer he received was a cold and despairing one. Get your stinking bloodied hands off me, you damn dirty dying human. With a swing of his feet, the man kicked him aside and threw him toward the alley wall. The vampire looked at this scene with amusement. You are still a racist. Didn't Team Mother taught us to be nice to others, sister? Garrett's eyes went wide when he heard the word sister. He looked at the person before him again. It was a tall, muscular, and flat-chested figure, without any feminine body parts visible to the eye. But that did not mean that it had to be a man. Not all women were pretty or feminine in appearance. Some of them were indistinguishable from men if they used a proper makeup or trained their body as strength-based warriors. And this woman was something of both. An unfeminine-looking female with a muscular body that could easily be mistaken as a man by those around her. And what about you, Bella? Once you hunted down dangerous individuals or assassinated those that the Supreme Ones deemed improper for their rule. Now you play vigilante and kill bugs. The vampire assassin, Bella, one of the 7 sisters. Once a human being from a noble family, she was adopted by Malik and Ains after her family disowned her because of her bloody fetishes. But Malik recognized her talents as a killer and took her in about 700 years ago. Using the racial change items and rituals, she was transformed into a vampire with princess and daywalker classes. She was trained and specialized at the art of assassination and infiltration. Once she hunted down dangerous individuals under the orders of Ains and Malik. But once the Holy Republic was destroyed, she was left without a job, rarely receiving any assignment from Nazarick. Bella, well, there isn't many jobs for me to do these days. Besides, our mother hasn't made a call in a long time, so I had to make a work for myself. This is my city. Somebody has to clean up the streets from this bugs. Don't you have your own city to protect, Acalia? Acalia, one of the 7 sisters, snorted again. Acalia, yeah, that's right. But like I said, I ran out of business there. That's why I thought to come here and pay you a visit. And by the looks of it, you could actually use a little help. She swung her halberd in the air, and the blood that soaked on it was dropped on the ground. Acalia, you missed some of those men when you came after this one, but I took care of them. Bella, thanks. But I left them because they weren't worth much when compared to this drug lord. Acalia looked at man before her feet. Though he was badly injured and almost drained out of his blood and life force by Bella, he was still clinging to the world of living. A good look at his terrified face would reveal that he was in great fear. Acalia, By the way, why did you bother yourself with all this cat and mouse play? You could have killed this guy without having to kill anyone else. So why did you do all that? Bella smiled evilly at her sister's question and revealed a sinister side of herself. Bella, because I wanted his blood to be filled with fear when I drank it. Fear adds spice to blood. Acalia smiled softly in response. She knew her sister liked to drink her blood warm and fresh. Instead of using the blood packs stored in the vaults of the Sorceress Kingdom Vampire Blood Bank, a bank that supplied vampires with their daily need of blood for a price. Acalia, well, it's not like I don't understand you. But try to keep your amusements as discreet as possible. We don't want to create problems for. Before she could finish her sentence, she felt a warm sensation on her chest, where her medallion was placed. She looked at Bella and saw that she reached for her medallion as well. They both looked at their medallion with confused looks. It was a magic medallion given by Malik to her adopted daughters. It was a magic item that allowed her to contact them at any place and any time around the globe. It was also infused with magic that allowed the seven sisters to be connected to Malik both mentally and magically. Whenever they felt they needed their mother aid, they could pray to their mother using their medallions and receive Malik commander buffs to make them stronger. Bella felt overjoyed by this development. It was years since the last time that Malik summoned her to her side. Bella, mother calls. At last, the wait is over. I hope she has some special assignment for me. Acalia, it is not just you. Mother called me as well. It must be something big that she has called both of us. Bella nodded her head in agreement. But while she did not know why their mother has called them to her side, she felt obliged to go to her side immediately. Bella, yes, you are right. Let us not waste time here and go to Nazarick. We can ask her ourselves then. The seven sisters had also received many magical items from Malik. One of them was an item that granted them the ability to teleport over long distances 4 times a day. Acalia, yes, you are right. But before we go, let me get some for the road. Bella looked at her sister with an annoyed look. Bella, really? Mother has finally summoned us, and you think about your stomach? It would be rude if we don't go to her side immediately. Acalia, I know. I will have my snacks fast. Acalia turned her attention to Garrett, who was still lying on the ground. She walked toward him with steady feet, and then grabbed him by the neck. To Garrett's bane horror, Acalia's hand became covered in brown fur. Her fingernails became long and sharp, and by the time she lifted him to look at him face to face, her face changed from that of a human to that of a beast. It was at this moment that he understood. The man-like woman was also a monster. A werewolf, to be precise. Though judging from the fact that her eyes did lose the signs of intelligence in them, she was likely from an advanced class of werewolves, called lycanthropes. She opened her mouth, and a high-pitched voice came out of it. Acalia, eyes, lungs, pancreas. So many snacks, so little time. She opened her big jaws and licked his face. Salty. She laughed, and despair swallowed Garrett's soul. That only made her laugh harder. That was the last thing he felt. The great temple of 41/Nazarick, capital of the Sorceress Kingdom. Nazarick, the capital of the Sorceress Kingdom. It was a city located at the center of the main continent, at the crossroad of Ains Road. The artery road of the Sorceress Kingdom, which extended from west to east and north to west, connecting all points of the Sorceress Kingdom to each other. It was a city built 800 years ago, when Ains Ul Gaon had conquered most of the world. The supreme beings, whom up until that point had the city of Irantil at the western continent near Nazarick serve as the capital, decided to create a new capital at the center of the continent to have better access to their vast lands and make their management easier. Over the centuries, Nazarick had grown into a megacity, spanning over 20 leagues in every direction and housing more than 50 million people in it. Nazarick is divided into 4 zones, separated by the walls of the city. Protected by 4 layers of city walls, it is known as a fortress city due to its appearance. The zones between each layer have their own unique characteristics. The middle zone was where people lived and where Merchants Guild and Herbalist Guild can be found. The outermost walls is used by the Sorceress Kingdom's military and has all the necessary military armaments. It houses about 20,000 undead soldiers from Nazarick, whom are constantly in order and active. The innermost wall houses the administrative zone. This zone has its own warehouses for food and is heavily protected by Nazarick soldiers. The zone in between those two areas is the residential area for civilians. The city has several plazas within this zone, with the biggest one called the Central Plaza. Lots of people set up their shops there, laying out all sorts of vegetables, spices, and other sorts of merchandise. And at the very center of the capital was the holy zone of the Great Temple. The holy zone was home to the largest temple in the entire world. The area around temple encompassed 700 hectares of land. The complex contains several areas, each designed for a specific purpose. The temples of 41 were more than just a place where people would come and go to pray to gods, hear divine speeches, or perform their burial rituals. The temples also played the role of the hospitals. People who became sick or felt that they were cursed would come to temple so that priests and clerics would use divine magic to heal them. The central temples, that were located in major cities, were also schools. Within them, youths who were either recruited by the government or were given to the temples by their parents, who considered it a great honor to devote their children to the service of the gods, were trained in the arts of divine magic, druidic and nature magic, healing knowledge, jurisprudence, and in some cases, paladins. Though the sorceress kingdom was ruled by an undead king with an undead army and numerous unholy or evil-type creatures in their service, paladins were still trained in order to provide security to holy temples and to aid the government in purging the lands from wild undead and evil beings that were naturally spawned or existed in the world. The paladins of the sorceress kingdom would begin their training at an early age, usually at the age of 5. By the age of 15, a novice who had completed their academic and magical education and battle training shall swear a sacred vow before the idol of the god of justice and strength. Touch me, don't laugh. It was the name of one of the 41 supreme beings. They would receive their first holy sword and armor, and after 3 more years of rigorous combat training, they would officially join the ranks of the Paladin Order. The great temple and capital was guarded by more than 1,000 paladins. The Academy of Holy Arts. It was a large building located at the Great Temple, dedicated to the training of future priests and clerics. Thousands of students and hundreds of teachers and high priests were moving through corridor, either entering their classrooms or exiting them. And within one of these classes, a certain figure sat on the ground. She was a stunningly beautiful and divine-looking young girl. She was wearing a pure white holy robe engraved with golden holy runes, and her name was Ariel. She was one of the high priestesses of the sorceress kingdom, one of the main propagandists of the faith of 41, and one of the most accomplished teachers of divine magic in the whole academy. She was once a member of the Roble Holy Kingdom royalty, descended from the noble line of Neobaraja, the human who had created the first order that worshipped Ain's Olgaun as their deity amongst the human nations. After she was born, she was taken in by Ains and Malik to be educated in Nazarick as a vassal ruler. But then it was discovered that she had major talent for learning divine magic, a talent that allowed her to advance quickly in the arts of divine magic. She became a user of 5th-tier magic at the tender age of 15, when she reached her limit as a human. The supreme beings offered her the chance to transcend into a higher holy life form, an angel, which would allow her to advance her magic beyond human limits. She accepted their offer, and in time became a user of 7th-tier magic. More than 900 years had passed since she became an angel and was granted the position of a high priest. And today she was teaching her divine doctrine to her young students. Surrounding her were several children. The way she tenderly smiled at the rowdy children and posture which she took when talking to them or listening to their words and questions was the very picture of a saint. Ariel. And so, the supreme beings made this world in their image and saved us all from the darkness that threatened to destroy us from within and without. The corrupt rulers enslaved their subjects or made them suffer with their incompetence and their inability to care about their people. The demons, led by the demon god King Jaldabaoth, were bent on destroying our world. But the 41 took pity on us. They, Ain's Olgaun and Malik al-Mud, descended on this world, formed their seats on the heavens, and lead us to salvation. And for 1,000 years, they have given us peace and prosperity. At this time, the sound of a bell rang out, indicating the time for class was over. But for Ariel, it meant that another part of her daily job was about to begin. Ariel, all looks like time is over. Though it pains me to do so, we must finish the class now. We will continue another time. The kids chorused, in voices filled with longing and reluctance. They would not have made such sounds if she had not thoroughly ensnared their hearts. Ariel, don't worry, I promise that next time, I will talk to Headmaster to give us more time. Okay. The kids energetically answered in affirmative in response to the teacher they loved, as if she was their mother. They left the class in order and with energy, going to the mess hall to eat their lunch. Ariel left the class as well. Standing sentry beside the door were two paladins. Ariel, let's go. The ceremony for your new brothers is about to begin. The paladins nodded in response and followed Ariel as she walked down the corridor and went straight for the White Hall. The White Hall was a section of the Holy Temple reserved for paladins. Here they rest, here they ate, here they trained, and here they would say their sacred vows when they begin their lives as paladin. Ariel entered the hall, and in response to her presence, more than 50 squire paladins bowed their head to the high priestess of the White Order. Ariel stood before the idol of Touch Me, the god of justice and strength, and turned her attention to the squires assembled before her. She had the aura of lovely mother when she was teaching those children back at her class, but right now, she took a serious face and a serious stand before the squires that had assembled before her. It was necessary. Just as she had to be kind to children to warm their hearts for the lessons that awaited them, she had to look strong and serious before this novices so that they would understand the reality of their situation. Ariel, you came to us as orphans or as offers. Some of you came here out of your own will. Some of you bear the names of proud families. Some have the names of smaller families, and some bear no name at all but the one they were given when they joined this order. And some of you are here because it is your family tradition. None of that matters now. All that is in the past. Here, in this temple of the gods, we are all from one house. We are all equal in the eyes of the gods. The only avail of virtue or vantage is your commitment to the high values and doctrine of the supreme beings. Today, at the age of 15, you stand ready to commit yourselves to the cause of the White Order. Here, you begin a new life only a selected few would have the honor of having in this world. But know this, once you start this patch, there is no going back. You shall remain true to your vows, or else you will face the wrath of the gods for betraying them. Some of the squires showed a slight concern in their faces, but that quickly vanished in a moment. Ariel, a man or woman of the White Order, lives their life for the White Order. Not for any lord, not for gold and glory, not for the honor of that family or that family, but for the White Order. You have all learned the words of your vow by now. Think carefully before you say them. The penalty for desertion and betrayal is death. If there is anyone among you who does not want to enter this house, who wants to have a normal life outside the walls of this temple, they can leave now with no shame. It is the most important moment of your life. So choose carefully. Ariel looked at the squires before her. They all stood their ground and did not even move. She smiled in her heart. This was only to be expected. After all, these boys and girls were trained at an early age. They knew no other life aside from what they had learned within this temples. The life of a paladin was the only life they knew. Even in marriage, a paladin would choose his bride or her husband from those among the ranks of the White Order. Many of these squires were born out of a long line of paladins who served this temple for generations. Ariel, then be ready to say your vows. Ariel turned her back to squire before her and looked at Touch Me idol. The squires all bowed as one before the statue of the paladin god. They placed their left hand on their knee and raised their right hand, and said their vows with Ariel. Ariel and squires, hear my words and bear witness to my vow. The darkness rises and light shall meet it. And now my fight begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall not covet gold and glory, hold no lands and house of my own. I shall wear no crown and win no battle for my own desires. I shall live and die as a paladin of the White Order. I am the light in the darkness. I am the shield that protect all that is good and innocent. I pledge my life and honor to the White Order and justice. For this day and night, and for all days and nights to come. The vows were complete. Ariel rose first and looked at the squires, no, at the paladins that were still on their knees. Ariel, you knelt as boys and girls. Rise now as men and women of the White Order. Rise again as paladins. Suddenly, Ariel's shining white wings sprang into existence from behind her back and haloed everyone with their light. She closed her eyes and say a silent prayer, and in that moment, every paladin was engulfed by a shining aura, an aura that drove away any fear or uncertainty in their hearts. They all knew what it meant. The High Priestess had given them her blessing. Now they were truly men and women of the White Order. The young ones stood up as one. They looked at each other and smiled. Every boy and girl opened their arms and embraced their brothers and sisters of life. Ariel looked at them with gentle and heartwarming smile. After the ceremony was over, Ariel went to exit the hall, when suddenly she was stopped by another woman who was watching the whole thing from the end of the hall. Well, that was quite a ceremony you put up there. I am glad to see you have so many eager recruits in for your order. Ariel smiled when she saw her favorite sister welcoming her. Merlina, it is so nice to meet you here. Merlina, she was one of the High Druid of the Green Temple and a user of 6th-tier magic. The Green Temples were dedicated to the training of future druids. The druids play an important role in the economy of the Sorceress Kingdom. They would keep the lands and champs fertile, prevent destructing storms of nature from destroying cities, town, and villages. They also governed glass gardens, artificially created champs that raised fresh vegetables and fruits, wheat and grain and other such things even during the winter, or in lands that natural elements were too harsh for them to plant any crops. So even in some deserts, one could find a rice field watered and kept fertile by the druids. Merlina was one of the High Druids. Just as Ariel had several priests and priestess as her subordinates, Merlina had several druids as her subordinates as well. Merlina smiled back at her sister. Merlina, I thought I'd come over and say hello, and to bring you a little gift. These days you rarely come to visit your little sister. Ariel, you know how much I love to come and see you, so that we could spend some time together as we did in the old days. But you know the responsibilities that lies on my shoulders. Merlina, yes, sister, I know. I too don't have much free time. From dawn to dusk, I have to teach students or watch over all those green desert projects. Every day we are trying to colonize non-habitable lands and turn them into places where people could live in the new towns and villages the Masons build there. But no matter how hard we try, some places are just too harsh and wild to tame. Ariel, I know. The frozen lands in the far north and the far south, or the deserts that are constantly subjected to great storms are just not the place where people should live, but that's enough talk about work. What is that gift that you were talking about? Merlina, it's right here. Saying so, she handed over a vase to Ariel. She took it with gratitude and happiness, but, Ariel, thank you very much, sister. But I thought vases were supposed to house a flower in them, right? Indeed. The vase that Merlina had given her was empty. There was nothing but a brown-colored loam in it. Merlina, oh sorry, but the flower is already in there. You just have to open your eyes and see it. She rubbed her hand around the vase and then placed it upon its loam. She whispered a silent spell, and in that moment, a small red rose began to grow within the vase with unnatural speed. It poked its head out of the loam, and in a matter of seconds, it grew into a full blossom. Ariel looked happily at her sister's wonderful gift. Ariel, thank you very much, sister. It is so beautiful. Merlina, anything for you. She patted her sister on her shoulder with a warm smile. Ariel, let's go have a drink. Merlina, if you are buying. Ha ha ha. They both laughed at each other and grabbed each other's hand. But just as they were about to leave and go to Ariel's room, they both felt a warmth on their chest and reached for their medallion. Ariel and Merlina looked at each other with open eyes. Ariel, the call? Mother calls us to her side? After all this time. Merlina, she is calling me as well. Could it be that something important has happened? They both had questions, but they knew they would have their answers soon enough. Ariel did not hesitate and casted a spell on herself and her sister. Her destination was the great tomb of Nazarick. Greater teleportation. Riestais/Governor Palace. The city of Riestais was the capital of Riestais Kingdom. Not long after the foundation of the Sorceress Kingdom, a civil war erupted the Riestais Kingdom. This civil war, which was fought between the royal faction and the noble faction, was caused by the famine that had grabbed the kingdom economy and was driving its people to starvation. But the Sorceress Kingdom invaded the Riestais and ended the civil war in favor of the royal family. Alas, by the time they came to the capital, most members of royal family were killed, with the exception of one person. The Golden Princess Renner Thier Char Delon Ralve's elf. The title was derived from her golden hair, silky smooth and supple as it draped over the back of her neck. Those healthy-looking smiling lips were a light cherry blossom pink in color. Dark blue eyes like sapphires shone with warmth and vibrant. The fashionable white dress further strengthened the image of purity she gave off to others. Around her neck hung a golden necklace, looking as if it was the emblem of her noble soul. Riestai's kingdom became subjugated by the Sorceress Kingdom in 3FSK. Ever since then, Princess Renervazelf, also known as the Golden Princess due to her benevolence, ruled the kingdom territory as the area guardian of the West. Since all of her family members were killed in the civil war that took place in 3FSK, she is the last remaining member of her family who was already loved by the people of Riestai's kingdom became the vassal ruler of Riestai's. But that was not the end of it. It was also common knowledge that the 41 supreme beings adored her goodness so much that they granted her immortality, making her the first immortal human, so that she may rule her people with her benevolence for millenniums. And ever since, the former royal palace of Riestai's served as the governor residence, where the area guardian of the West would manage the affairs of this kingdom and its 60 million people. And tonight, she sat behind her desk in her room, managing the affairs of her area to guard. There were other people present as well. Most of them were the officers who were tasked with relaying her instructions to the mayors and other officers. Renner. So according to these reports, we have only managed to harvest our yearly need. There are no provisions for emergencies, right? Officer. Yes, my lady. Renner. Well then, we will have to call for more resources from the east. At this rate, it will only take a few years before people begin to starve. Officer, our land simply doesn't have enough resources to feed so many people. Even with all of our providential policies, we are still facing difficulties. There has been several cases where we were forced to sell foodstuff on rations, forgive me, my princess. But I think we need to increase our income by adding to our taxes. Renner went deep in thought. After a few moments, she raised her head and looked at the officers again. Renner, we can't do that. Most people have trouble paying the current taxes. If we act to increase taxes, it would only serve to make my people suffer. I do not wish for that. Renner's sincere words touched the heart of everyone present. There was no doubt that her primary thought had always been the welfare of her people. The officer who suggested the act of increasing taxes lowered his head in shame as he saw his princess' benevolence and concern for her people. If her existence could be summed up in one word, it would be golden. The word referred to her beauty. However, few knew that she possessed an ability which would make her beauty pale in comparison. Her intelligence, observational skills, comprehension, creativity, leadership, and every other aspect concerning rulership was overdeveloped. If described in one word, it would be genius. It could only be said to be a gift from God. Her thoughts, which could only be described as divine inspiration, were all created from combing through and observing countless information. Even if one searched all across the continent, no one could come close to her abilities. Even amongst the beings that transcended humanity, there were few who could compare to her. Even in Nazarick, only Albedo, who oversees all servants and guardians, and Demiurge, who possesses fiendish wisdom and expertise in all things concerning rulership, could truly match her. Humans always make decisions from their own point of view. In that sense, she could be described as strange or weird. However, she had one fault. She could never understand why others did not know what she knew. If there was someone who was on equal terms with her, they might have recognized her for the genius she was. If it had been so, results might have been different. But this was not the case. The evaluation she received was that of a young girl who annoyed others because she only spoke of incomprehensible things. Because she was a cute girl, there was not too much hatred for her, and she received a fair amount of love as well. But the fact that nobody really understood what she said had a huge effect on her mental development and slowly twisted the girl over time. It could be said that she was lonely because she was a genius. Without anyone by her side who could understand her, her stress only increased to the point where she was unable to eat anything without regurgitating it. Nobody thought the princess, who was only getting weaker and weaker, would survive. She might, indeed, not have without her puppy, and even if she did survive, a demon lord would have been born instead. A demon lord who could only look at things in terms of numbers, and force sacrifice upon the few for the good of the many. Renner tried to comfort them and bring them out of their negative mood. Renner, there is no need to worry. I have thought about a temporary solution, but I will have to talk to His Majesty first and gain his approval. You don't need to worry about it. You can resume your duties now. The officer felt relaxed for the moment. They bowed and left the room, leaving her alone. Renner was deep in thought. Due to the large number of people, it was difficult to feed them all and provide the social benefits for them on equal grounds. She was thinking hard to find a permanent solution to these problems. Suddenly, she looked at her watch and realized that it was almost midnight. Oh no, I forgot to get Climb. My poor husband must be starting to feel sick again. She left the room in a hurry and went straight for her husband's chambers. She opened the door and, to her relief, found her beloved Climb sitting on his bed waiting for her arrival. She breathed in relief and went straight to sit beside him. Renner, oh my dear husband, I am sorry that I am late. So much work is dumped on my weak shoulders. In response, a young man who seemed to be in his 20s locked his shining eyes with that of his beloved wife and answered with a warm smile. His name was Climb, and he was Renner's beloved husband. One might say he was the only one in the whole world that she had any affection for. It was truly a simple change, their meeting as children. While she was going out for a stroll with the guards on one rainy night, she picked up a puppy. The puppy, whose life was saved thanks to its master, showed something in its eyes for her. It was a heavy set of eyes. The girl certainly felt it. The look of admiration in all its purity. She was used to looks of indifference. She was used to looks of disdain. She was used to looks of doting. However, she could not understand that gaze. That truthful gaze was a target of hatred, panic, happiness, unknown sensations, and a human. Just like herself, she saw a human in him. The puppy she picked up became a boy, and then a man. Whether he was a puppy or a boy or a man, that same pure gaze stared at her. However, that gaze was no longer painful. Because of that gaze, she could converse with others with some semblance of a normal person. She could interact with those ugly and filthy lesser beings. And now, Renner's world was complete with Climb just being in it. Today, he was no longer a boy. He was a grown man, and an immortal human on top of that. Originally, he was the bodyguard of Princess Renner before the foundation of the Sorceress Kingdom. But both he and Renner were in love with each other. It was a dream that could never become reality because Climb was a boy of unknown birth and origin, while Renner was the princess of a kingdom and a member of royal family. But everything changed when Riestai's kingdom became part of the Sorceress Kingdom and Renner became the area guardian of this vassal state. She and Climb were allowed to marry, and due to her request, the supreme beings granted Climb immortality as well, so that he and Renner could live forever with happiness together. Climb, don't apologize, my dear. I know of the burden that you carry every day, but I am always here to help you lighten that burden. Renner smiled seductively to her husband. She then grabbed her hand and helped him to stand up from their bed. Renner, come now, darling. Before we get to spend the night together, there is something that must be done. Climb, for you, my dear. I will do anything. The pair left the room. Climb followed Renner like a lamb as she took her to the lowest part of palace, the Dark Dungeon. The Dark Dungeon was an ancient part of the royal palace. It was used to hold some noble prisoner in VIP cells. Ever since the Riestai's kingdom became part of the Sorceress Kingdom, this dungeon became obsolete. Still, that also meant it was the perfect place for some of the activities that took place in it. Renner brought Climb with her into a dark cell, where there was an iron chair. A chair that was anchored to the ground so that it would not move. Renner, please have a sip, my darling. Climb, why? Renner, it's almost midnight. It's been 3 months since you had your last treatment. So we better start now and here before it happened. It's better that we do it here than letting our children witness such a scene. Renner and Climb had several sons and daughters through the years. While they were all taken care for, and most of them were adults, Renner did not want them to see what she and Climb were about to do. Climb nodded his head in understanding and sat on the chair. In that moment, several restraints began to bind him to his seat, but he did not show any fear. After all, Renner told her that about every 3 months, his mind would fall into chaos and disorder. So Renner had to treat his illness. Away from the eyes of their children, Renner turned her back to Climb and placed a case on the desk. After saying the passwords, the case opened and revealed the items within. There were several crystal needles. a bottle of a golden-colored potion, and some things that looked like surgery tools. She picked up the golden potion and began to soak the tip of the needles in its liquid. Just as Renner was observing all these tools, ensuring once more that nothing was missed, a voice came from behind. "Climb, what? What is this? Where am I?" His voice was filled with shock. His former calmness and obedience was nowhere to be seen. In fact, he looked like a terrified child now. Renner turned around and looked at her beloved husband again. "Renner, oh my, you changed back sooner than before. Looks like you are developing a resistance toward my current methods. Maybe I should up the dosage? That might work." "Climb, what? What is going on here, Renner? Why am I tied up to this chair?" She had done this more than she could count, but it still bothered her to go through with this repetitive behavior Climb showed every time. "Renner, you have become mentally ill, my darling. I am just here trying to cure you." Climb's mind was still in confusion, but after a few seconds, "Climb, I remember now. What have you done? You betrayed us all. I loved you with all my heart, and yet you betrayed me." "Renner, I did no such thing. I have given you all my love. I made sure you survived the purge that took place in Riestais. Even more, I convinced the gods to give you immortality as well, so that we could live happily together. Alas, you were short-sighted." When Climb found out about the deal Renner had made with Nazarick and the fact that she had betrayed her kingdom and her family, even her very own humanity, to the Sorcerer King, he tried to kill his wife. But Renner, using her developed magical powers, restrained him. She even managed to figure out a way to mentally manipulate it and shape him in her desired image. But unfortunately, while the process was successful, its effect was temporary, lasting 3 months at best. So she had to repeat it regularly to ensure he would remain loyal to her and her love. "Climb, how can you speak of love to me? If you really loved me, you would not have made me suffer like this. True lovers don't deceive and lie to each other. But from the very first day I saw you, you were putting on an act, deceiving me as you deceived everyone around you with your fade personality." This time, Renner gentle attire disappeared. 2 pairs of eyes collided with each other. It was as if 2 snakes were tangled in a fight to the death. Then suddenly, light from Renner's eyes disappeared. But it did not end there. Renner's skin became as pale as milk. Her golden hair turned white. The color of her eyes changed from that of dark sapphire to that of a blood-red ruby. 2 red horns, that were gently curved, came of her forehead. 2 pair of wings, that seemed to be made out of fire, appeared behind her back. This was Renner's true nature and face. As a reward for her efforts in bringing the Riestais kingdom under the banner of the Sorceress Kingdom, the Supreme Beings gave her the Fallen Seeds, a racial change item that allowed its user become a demon. There were other racial change items such as Heavenly Feathers that could turn their users into angles. But because Renner's karma value was highly negative, it could not be used on her. Climb shed cold sweat at the scene of his wife turning into an ugly and dangerous monster that still had a smile on her face. He had already had a clue what kind of hideous true self was lying beneath that beautiful face. "Climb, so this your true face now. You are not even a human being anymore. You have become a demon." "Renner, yes, my darling. I am a demon, but I am a benevolent and caretaking one. Under my rule the people have lived happily, with peace and prosperity, something that all those human rulers of the past denied them. You and I managed to be together because of this." Renner opened her arms, as if she wanted to hug him. But Climb's answer was the same as it always has been. "Climb, I can never be in love with a monster. You have forsaken everything that was good about you." Renner dropped her arm. Her expression became that of a sad and heartbroken woman. But it changed quickly. It was kind of a shame that Climb would no longer come to love her on his own choice. But that could not be helped either. Climb did not need to know about bothersome things. All he needed to do was look at her with those pretty eyes of his, and to keep her bed warm at night. "Renner, well, it doesn't matter, darling. You have always loved me, and I will make sure that it will remain that way." Renner danced her finger in the air. Suddenly, the crystal needle flew out of the case. The way they moved in the air by themselves was like that someone was holding them. But that was not the case. In truth, it was Renner that was holding them with her mind. It was a special magical ability that she developed as demon. She managed to obtain 2 job classes, aside from the ones concerning rulership, such called Mind Master and Spirit Master. These classes were mental-oriented jobs that gave their user the ability to influence other people's emotions and thoughts. Though they could not change someone's memories or force them into believing what they wanted, they could instead convince them to do their biddings by emotional manipulations. The two passive skills that came with these two classes were telekinesis and telepathy. The crystal needles flew closer toward Climb's face and his eyes. Climb felt horrified about what was about to happen to him and willed his expression not to change. Renner, don't worry, my love. You will have no memories of this. Not of this treatment, not of your experience that led to reject my love. I will borrow into your mind with these magical needle and a little bit of my own magic, and then inject that little charm potion directly into your brain. All your sad memories will be gone, and you will learn to love again. The needles got closer and closer to Climb's face and started to penetrate his skin. He felt a great, terrible pain coursing through his body, as if someone had just pierced his heart with a heated iron spike. Climb, no. I will not forget. I will get out of this prison. I will His words were cut in half and replaced with a scream, as one of the needle entered his right eye and went straight for his brain. Renner smiled softly and placed her hands on Climb's forehead and activated her magic. A few hours later, the sun was almost rising, shedding its radiance through the window. Within the private quarters of the governor, two figures were lying on bed together. One of them was the beautiful golden princess Renner, and the other was her beloved husband Climb. As the sun shined on their bed and lightened their eyes, Climb moaned and woke up. He looked at his right and saw that his benevolent wife was sleeping beside him. He gently cuddled his wife's cheek. That was enough to wake Renner from her slumber. Climb, I am sorry, my dear. I woke you. Renner smiled at her husband and answered without even getting up. Renner, it's okay, my darling. I've been awake for a while now. Climb kissed her on her forehead with compassion and reached for his clothes beside the bed. Renner watched with a smile as her husband left the room when he dressed. A minute later, she too was dressed and out of the bed. She readied herself for the work that lay ahead, when suddenly there was a beep-beep sound ringing in her ear, and a familiar voice spoke in her head. Demiurge, Area Guardian Renner. Do you hear me? Renner, Demiurge-sama? May I know why you have called me? Demiurge, there is a matter of importance urgency. I need you to come to Nazarick and see me in my office. I will explain everything there. Great Tomb of Nazarick / 10th floor. Renner was called by Demiurge at dawn, who summoned her for an important matter. He said he would explain everything once she arrived, which he did. Renner had just met with Demiurge. He briefed her on everything that had happened in the past month, and informed her of the vital mission that was entrusted to her and her little sister. Being the first person adapted by Malik, she was considered to be the eldest and thus the leader of the 7 sisters. So she was summoned to Nazarick before any of them. She remained in Nazarick for the day and waited for the arrival of her sisters. By midnight, they had all gathered here. All, except for one person. Renner welcomed them all as they arrived in Malik's office. Renner, welcome, sisters. I am glad you are all here. Ariel, when we heard the mother's call, of course it was natural that we come by all haste. The others nodded in agreement as well. Bella, so do you know what this is all about? I had to drop a lot of work and come here. I like to know why. Renner, sure, I will tell you all that Demiurge-sama told me. After that you can as mother about it, if you felt that my explains were not enough. The others chuckled, and Renner began to explain everything to them. After half an hour has passed, Malik finally entered the room. All the sisters bowed as one and greeted their mother. Sisters, welcome, mother. We are blessed to be at your presence. Malik smiled and opened her arms. She hugged each and every one of them. Malik, I am glad you are here. It is so nice to meet you again. It's been a long time since all of us were together. Merlina, Renner told us that you had a mission that required all of us working together. She explained everything, but we would also like to hear it from you as well. Malik, of course. These are dark times, my daughters. The Sorceress Kingdom needs your services more than ever. I am sure you all heard of what happened. They nodded their head. Malik, I was going to handle my conquest mostly by myself, but the circumstances requires that I place my main attention here. That is why I have summoned all the 7 sisters to help me in this work. Acalia, before that, I like to ask something. Malik, go ahead. Ask. Acalia, you said you summoned all 7 sisters, but there is only 5 of us here. We all know that Caruso is already on the other side. But where is our other sister? Malik realized that Akalia, who usually acted like a meathead she appeared to be, was more cautious that she was at the past, and smiled with satisfaction that she had grown. Malik, I called her before and of you. She is currently doing what I tasked her to do. Akalia, and what that might be. The harbor of Marillion/2000 hours p.m. There was a great commotion at the harbor. Several ghost ships, which served as part of the Sorceress Kingdom naval army, had anchored at the harbor. At the port, thousands of Nazarick soldiers were moving in several groups. They were comprised from several types of mid-tier undead, from Dullahan warriors/guards to death cavaliers and death thieves. But there were no death knights or skeletons amongst them. In fact, they were all chosen because they didn't differ much from humans in appearance. Granted, Dullahans had no head beneath their helmets, but as long as they did not remove it, one would not notice. The soldiers began boarding the ghost ships. The way they were organized, marching uniformly with precise, equidistant footsteps, was worthy of praise. Under perfect and precise command, the Legion began to board the ships. Under all this activities, a single person was walking casually amongst the undead at the desk of a ghost ship that stood before all others. Said person was wearing a military uniform, a white shirt with a black necktie and a black coat on top of it. Her gaskin was black as well. She was wearing a gray war scarf on her shoulders. The military beret on her head bore the insignia of a human skull. The bracelet on her left arm had the insignia of Ain's old gown. She had sharp and fierce eyes, not unlike Malik except that her eyes were blue, and her hair which dangled on her shoulders was black as night. She was the imperator of this army, the grand admiral of the naval force that gathered in this harbor, and her name was Artemisia. She was a commander, general, and strategist like her mother Malik. In fact, Malik herself taught her everything she knew about being a commander. While her overall abilities as a commander, sergeant, strategist, and general was lesser than Malik, she had levels as an admiral and grand admiral, which meant that she was also proficient in naval battles. She was a draconian as well, except that she was not half human, half dragon. But she was created, better said bred, in one of Demiurge's interracial breeding experiment. She was the offspring of a female sea dragon lord that was captured by Nazarick, and one of the 7 evil lords that served Demiurge, the evil lord whose name was Avarice, which made her half dragon and half demon. The 7 evil lords under Demiurge are named after the 7 deadly sins: pride, avarice, envy, wrath, sloth, lust, gluttony. She was tasked with Malik to select 3,000 human-looking soldiers from Nazarick and prepare for travel to Mir. She was given this task at the morning, and she completed it by nightfall. The Ministry of Magic had constructed a new gate. This one was larger than its peers. It was designed for the purpose for transporting ships through the seas, and it was placed in harbor, ready to teleport all the ghost ships and their sailors and the soldiers that boarded them to the Sea of Myrth. One of the officers walked forward and stood before his admiral. He saluted and waited for his next command. Officer, Commander, Artemisia, at ease. Report. Officer, out of 50 ships, 47 are boarded and ready for sail through the gate. Artemisia, we sail once all ships are boarded. We are the vanguard of the Sorceress Kingdom. There must be no flaw in our acts. The rest of the officers and sailors nodded in agreement. Officer, all will surely in awe of the might of the Sorceress Kingdom. Artemisia showed a soft and small smile. Though most may think of it as demonstration of good emotions, her fierce gaze made the people around her uneasy. She looked at the people around her, the undead soldiers, the officers, and the sailors. Suddenly, she locked her gaze with that of one of the sailors. Artemisia, you. The sailor who was called stepped forward without hesitation. He knew better than to defy her. Artemisia, what do you think? Sailor, all will perish before the might of the supreme beings. Artemisia nodded her head in satisfaction. Her soft smile did not leave her face. Artemisia, your words fill my heart with confidence. Still, it is a curious thing for a simple sailor to not lower his eyes when questioned by me. That could have been just a lack of discipline. Suddenly, she grabbed both of his hands with her own and looked at them. Artemisia, a man's hand don't lie. They reveal every flaw and imperfection in his character. You see, Your hands are not the hands of someone who spent his life pulling ropes and raising sails." She released the sailor's hand and turned her back on him. Before turning back a few steps later, "I know every single man beneath my leash. Care to explain how I don't know you?" The sailor, whose head was lowered, raised his head to look at Artemisia's eyes. "Sailor, forgive me, Commander. Allow me to introduce myself." Saying so, he reached into his sleeve and drew out a hidden dagger. He slashed one of the officer's neck who tried to stop him. Artemisia seized the spy. The spy did not wait and jumped overboard into the sea. Artemisia immediately took a bow and arrow from the hands of an undead soldier nearby and shot an arrow in the water. While her job classes were focused on commander-type abilities, she had some job classes as a sword master and archer as well. But she was only capable of handling warriors that were level 30 at best. A few seconds later, a corpse appeared on the surface of the sea. "What a coward," she muttered to herself. She handed the bow back to the undead soldier and returned back to her position. She issued a mental command to her troops, who were all boarded on their ships by now. "Artemisia, all units. We will move out in less than 10 minutes. Get ready to pass through the gate." And so the armies of the Sorceress Kingdom entered the lands of ice and fire. Meanwhile, back in the free city of Mir, Kurusu was sitting on the ground in her mother office in the Great White Villa. Her legs were crossed, and she sat in meditational way. Her eyes were closed. And while she seemed to be in this room physically, the same can't be said for her mind and spirit. It's been days since her mother left her in charge of the city, and things proved to be more difficult than she anticipated. There had been disturbing news coming from within and outside the city. Right now she was trying to gather some information about them herself. A few minutes ago, she had casted a spell called astral teleportation and teleported her astral form from her office to somewhere else. This 5th-tier spell separated the caster astral form from their physical form and allowed their astral form to teleport to their desired destination. Since the caster would be observing their target through their invisible astral form, it would count as physical observation and was thus unblockable by anti-divination magic. The caster would remain unseen, and she could see and eardrop the information she required. She had spent more than 10 minutes observing different locations around Mir. She changed the scenery and teleported her astral form somewhere else, and saw the same disturbing things outside Mir borders. She terminated her magic at this point. Kurusu took a deep breath, and with a voice full of concern said, "Mother is going to be so pissed when she finds out about this." Intermission. The Great Yellow Sahara. It was the name of a massive desert located at the center of the eastern continent. Its climate was hot. Even in shadow, and a winter day the degree of the air reached 50 centigrade. The surface was covered by an endless ocean of pure sand. There was not even a thorn growing on its ground because this empty desert almost received no rain in the whole year. Sometimes it would not rain for 3 years. This was land truly devoid of life, at least on the surface. Deep beneath the boiling sands and the hot sun, at the depth of 300 meters, there was an underground city. Said city was 5 leagues wide in every direction. It was full of small and large buildings, and it housed about 1 million people. It was always bright in the city. The source of light were the giant crystalline minerals that were hanging on the ceiling. The water source was an endless fountain that was created through the magic of the gods, the super-tier spell, creation. This city was built over 200 years ago by the 7 counselors of the Holy Republic in secret. The counselors had built the city so that they may take refuge in it in case of emergencies. It was also meant to serve as a military base, housing more than 50,000 mid-tier angels within it. There was a great palace located at the center of this city. One could guess that it served as the management palace. Said palace was quite large. It had more than 200 living rooms and several halls. Within one of the living rooms, a lonely paladin sat on the ground. He was person in full armor, which was not out of ordinary because he was about to meet someone important. Before him were 2 big paintings. One of them displayed the image of the mighty paladin of the Republic, the world guardian Artanis, while the other showed the image of a female angle that looked like a priestess. The paladin, that was wearing the armor of Artanis, was staring at the pictures, when suddenly another figure entered the room. "His Holiness will see you now." The paladin looked at the one who entered his room, and saw a woman he knew far too well. She was an angel. Her eyes were golden, and her hair was platinum-colored. Her looks were beautiful, though her facial expression was that of a zealot. She was Uriel, a warrior priestess that excelled in battling evil creatures. And she was also the daughter of His Holiness, the one he owed his allegiance and loyalty to. Understood. I will present myself immediately, he answered with a clawed and emotionless voice. Uriel, come with me then. The paladin followed Uriel, and they left the room and passed through the halls together. Before they reached the main hall, when His Holiness was residing, Uriel stood beside the door, indicating that the paladin had to enter alone. He steeled himself and entered the room, where he saw a middle-aged-looking angel was sitting on a white throne addressing another angel who was kneeling before him. He was Abaddon, the supreme leader of the secret Holy Order, the last remaining member of the 7 counselors of the Grand Holy Republic. Surrounding him in the hall were 7 level 80 cherubim gatekeepers that served as his personal guards. He was also the holder of the powerful magician job class World Disaster, which meant he had incredible offensive magic power. He walked forward toward the supreme leader and could clearly hear his words, which were directed toward the kneeling angel. Abaddon, within our grasp indeed, my son, General Samuel. Well done. Be ready to strike at my command. The East will soon be within our grasp. Samuel, thank you, Father. I promise that I will not fail you. Samuel stood up and walked toward the door. The paladin and Samuel eyes met for a moment, and Samuel directed a taunting smile toward him before leaving the hall. He and Samuel held each other as rivals when it came to the affections of the supreme leader. He paid it no heed and presented himself to the supreme leader and knelt before him. Abaddon, do you wonder why I entrusted someone with his ambition in such a place of power? Because ambition, if properly manipulated, can be a sharp tool. How is you wound? I heard you refuse to be healed by my daughter magic. It is nothing. Abaddon, He stood from his seat and walked toward his kneeling paladin. Abaddon, the mighty Arthas, son of the world guardian Artanis. When I found you, you were but a newborn child. Your mother asked me with her dying breath to protect you. I was honestly surprised. None of us knew that your father and mother were in a relationship when I found her with you in her hands. I promised myself that I would take care of you in the best way, not just because I was a friend with your parents, but because even in childhood, I saw what all teachers live to see. Raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special. The potential of your bloodline. A new Artanis. Then, the looks of admiration in his eyes vanished and was replaced with disappointment. Abaddon, now I fear I was mistaken. Arthas raised his head and looked at his master. Arthas, I have given everything I have to you. I devoted myself to you and to the Holy Order. Abaddon, take that mask off your face. Arthas lowered his head. He reached for his helmet and removed it, showing the face beneath. His face was that of a young, yet seasoned warrior. His eyes were paler than stone and darker than milk, just like his father's eyes. His hair, however, was dark and silky, cut short for the sake of functionality. Beneath his right eye, however, there was a large half-healed scar. Abaddon, yes, there it is. You have too much hatred and darkness in your heart to be a paladin, young Arthas. Arthas, I saw an opportunity to get justice for my parents' death, and I seized it. Abaddon looked at him again. This time his anger was unmistakable. Abaddon, and look at you now. What did you accomplish by seizing that opportunity and acting on your own against my orders? You were consumed by your dark desire for revenge and became unbalanced, bested by a dark elf girl who was not even proficient in singular combat. You failed. This time, Arthas finally lost his cool and became angry. He stood up in a fit of rage. But before he could do anything, dragon lighting, a bolt of lighting, shaped in the form of a dragon, came out of the hand of Abaddon and struck Arthas, knocking him back several feet. The cherubim gatekeepers immediately took a battle formation. They put forward their shield and readied their lances of holy fire. Abaddon casually turned his back to Arthas and returned to his seat. Abaddon, Ain's Olgown lives. Your orders were to avoid engagement. Only observe until further reinforcement could be sent to you, so that you could capture him and bring him here, where I would break his physical form and lock his soul within our spirit prison. As long as he and his daughter are alive, Nazarick and the Sorceress Kingdom will stand strong and united. I thought you would be the one to put an end to this war. Alas, you are no Artanis. You are just a child, hiding behind his father's shadow and legacy. Arthas returned to his quarters. In his hand, he was holding his father's helmet. His mind and spirit was split to the bone. He looked at Abaddon as his father, and his father was disappointed in him. Ah! He threw away the helmet in a fit of rage. It was then that he realized another presence in his room. He looked at the door and saw Uriel standing at the entrance. She looked at him with clear sadness in her eyes. She closed the door and walked toward him. Uriel, his words were not meant as a scold. They were meant as a challenge for you. Don't lose your faith, Arthas. You will get justice for your parents, as you will get justice for all the live that were ended and the souls that were enslaved by Ain's old gown. Arthas lowered his head and said nothing as he sat on his bed. Uriel sat beside him and put her hands on his shoulders. Uriel, don't be upset at my father. No matter what he says, you know that he loves you like his own children. Arthas, I know. My anger does not lie with him. It lies with myself. I allowed my own selfish desires get in the way of justice. Because of that, we lost another chance to strike. I have failed him, just as I failed you. Uriel placed her hands on his cheekbones, forcing him to look at her face to face. Uriel, never say that. No matter what happens, I will stand at your side. Uriel and Arthas locked their eyes as they slowly shared a passionate kiss. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to support the writer. Like, sub, and share the video for more awesome stories. See you in the next video.